Let's kick it off.
All
Sounds good.
right. All right, Emily, let's go ahead and get started. Cohort number one, humanity-centered design.
Super excited. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. I've been kind of spamming your emails a little bit because we're really looking forward to this. And we want other people to be as excited as we are. So, Kit and Adam have been wonderful partners in this, from the actual vision and implementation of Skilly, to making sure that this is accessible to folks in the social impact sector, including small nonprofits. I'm going to let Adam run the majority of the session. And I know there's a little bit of background that each of them will give on their experience and expertise in this space. But the biggest thing for you to know is that they're extremely wonderful partners, committed to making this equitably accessible for folks of all organization sizes. So I'm going to step off my soapbox, and turn it back over to Adam and Kit and run right into the presentation.
Okay, wonderful. And thanks, Emily, for hosting us. And thanks everybody for, punching through and kind of getting on the call today. At any point in time, if you have any questions, given the spirit of this as an information session, please just stop and ask. And Kit will be watching my partner in change over the last, decade for key questions and hello. So Kit, you want to just say hi and make sure everyone can see you in the chat?
Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for being here this morning.
All right, wonderful. Okay, so Kit will be my partner in change in this as well. We'll be going through a little bit about how we're thinking about the humanity-centered design cohort. And again, just would encourage everybody to say hello or stop us in our tracks or let us know if you're seeing something a slightly different way than what we are doing. And again, there's no bad questions. This is meant to be challenged. Emily and Olivia and Fred and others at the Forbes Funds and GPNP have asked us to really kind of be here and be vulnerable with everybody about sort of where we think we can really help and add. But I'm encouraging everybody here to actually ask those tough questions like, Adam, how would I really use what you just said? Or give me 3 examples of when this has actually really made a difference. Or tell me a little bit about what the gotchas are here. Those are the types of questions we really want to bring out of everybody because it would be a shame in all the areas and topics that we could cover today if they didn't mean anything to you. With just a quick, hello from Kit and a faster, hopefully, hello from me. My name is Adam Pulisic. My day to day is partnering with Kit and others on an AI technology that, if you're sticking around for some of the other cohort explanations, is all about ethical persuasion and influence. So it's really around kind of finding that first AI employee that acts in a junior development director capacity. This cohort is what we call the kind of foundational cohort that ladders into our cohort number 2, which is all around human-led ethical persuasion and influence. And of course, the AI dimension of that will follow in our trifecta of 3 30-minute open houses. My career, as you can glance if you haven't had a chance to, has really been around the kind of high-tech, high-growth, and kind of academic pursuits. So if you've seen me around Pittsburgh, it's a chance you've caught me about a third of the time on Carnegie Mellon's campus. I teach in the School of Computer Science, the Business School, and something called the Human Computer Interaction Institute, which is all under the umbrella of my entrepreneurial appointment at the Swartz Center. I've spent about a third of my life being an entrepreneur, in and around, or excuse me, a third of my life kind of leading in an entrepreneurial capacity. So you could have seen me around with Kit talking about the effects of AI and why the for-profit and the nonprofit sector should be thinking about hiring AI employees. And then you might have caught me in the community setting. I started at a community organization called the shop.org in Homewood that's recently transitioned, but I spend a lot of my time thinking about inclusive entrepreneurship. So how do we bring technology to those that want to create, not just those that want to build software as the main purpose of their business. But today we're going to be talking about design thinking that has become humanity-centered design. So we looked around over the last, what is it, Em, probably almost 5 years with Forbes Funds and GPNP and asked ourselves why more nonprofit and social impact organizations weren't using human-centered design. And it wasn't for the lack of sort of the number of certifications that executive directors had, like, it's like, why wasn't it being applied? And one of the couple of first reasons we got was, first and foremost, like, nobody had access to all the expensive templates and tools. So we spent about 2 years, the Forbes Funds, Kit and myself, actually recording and translating about 1,000 hours of design thinking templates and best practices and know-how, and sort of been there, done that experience into a synchronous set of lectures and video and content, which is the foundation that we'll be using as part of this cohort. So sort of big item number 1 you have for you and your organization. So participating in the cohort gives you access to the strategic design in a box course for you and up to 50 of your colleagues just by participating. Inside of that class, which is again is the foundation for our design thinking cohort, trying to drive out empathetic, inspiring, inclusive, and adaptive thinking methods, is this idea of real templates, both downloadable, printable PDF versions of templates to use, and digital templates online in a tool called Miro. Now, Miro is like a number of other what's called virtual whiteboard tools that are coming together. But it's important to realize about this cohort that this can be as analog, as digital, or as hybrid as you'd like it to be for your teams. And that we will facilitate and we will teach in this cohort methods of doing digital to digital, meaning kind of high tech to high tech kind of participant and facilitators, digital to hybrid, meaning people that have some ability to use technology but need to augment it with kind of offline PDF and downloadable print work. And then what we call remote facilitated work. And so this is an important topic in the social impact sector because when we started, if you've ever done any kind of training like this, you know that being a participant, if you are pretty digitally literate, is relatively straightforward. The challenge becomes when you're addressing some of the most vulnerable or underutilized communities, and so you have to do what's called remote hybrid assisted design, meaning someone like Emily Francis is sitting maybe downtown teaching everybody in 15 different locations. But people like an Adam or a Kit or a Claire or a Shannon or a Jared or a Laura or someone on this call is actually sitting on site or at location in a school, in a church, in a community center, in anywhere and everywhere where people can ultimately express the solution to the problem that they're very much living in. And so we're going to focus in our humanity-centered design on not just doing facilitator or participant-driven dynamics that are classic and traditional and stereotypical, but we're also going to teach what we call hybrid methods of facilitating when you serve a vulnerable population that can't be on site or would naturally and responsibly struggle with technology because they just haven't been supported in the way to kind of reach their potential. Let me kind of just pause here for a quick second and see if everybody understands a little bit what we mean about design thinking and this problem solving method, but more importantly, about the kind of way we are going between analog and digital, on site and remote. Making sense so far? Does anybody want to have a reaction, or maybe if there's Kit, any questions we wanted to illuminate along the journey?
Laura and I went back on what a key feature of Skill Builder, but I wanted to kind of keep the conversation about the cohort and the human-centered design.
Oh yeah, well, the 30 seconds about Skill Builder, which Laura, if you're going to be around at, I think it's 11 to 11:30 a.m. today is our third cohort. So Em's going to share out the other two cohort explainers in case people want to grind through us and marathon this hour and a half of information sessions. So, but in its shortest form, right? The first cohort one, is all around bringing shape and taming the crazy complexity of all the chaos that all of you incredible people have to manage every day, working on the most important problems on the planet, which are human-centered. The second cohort is really about how you ask people for resources, right, that are lucky enough to have resources and privilege and status to facilitate that effort. And then there's some kind of AI dimensions. And then finally, the third cohort is if you have organized your problems in an articulate way, understood about how to activate the human potential inside of your organization to be more effective doing things like development, then we want to borrow that voice, tone, and culture and lend it to artificial intelligence that we're going to spend a lot of time in the third cohort talking about how you can build that in an ethical and reduce out the bias in your development of AI without losing the voice, tone, and culture of an organization. But candidly, it all starts with how you understand your problems, which is the root of design thinking.
If I can add to that, Adam, I think one of the best examples of this that a lot of nonprofits request from the Forbes funds is around strategic planning. And design thinking is almost like applying the way that you think about going through a strategic planning process to every level of your organization so you can be more effective as humans. And so the way that we layered this, originally the conversation was around Skilly and onboarding nonprofit organizations to that, but recognizing the directives that we often hear from board members or funders around becoming more iterative around AI technology and all these new resources. Being able to apply those in the best, most efficient places within our organization has to come from making humans more efficient first. And so that's where the design thinking really kicks off all of these pieces.
Well said, Emily.
So,
Okay, well, I think if there's no questions, this deck, I think, is in part going to be circulated around, or it certainly can be in the process. But at a minimum, there's also some resources in the bottom right-hand side of my slide where I keep a public list on Amazon around other kind of background topics. So, this will be a meet you where you are cohort. So inherently, like there will be a little bit of refinement that happens over the next week based on those that formally commit, because based on the level of experience and exposure and kind of critical problems, we might cluster even within a cohort, and we might pattern a little bit differently based on what issues are being worked on together or different, what stage of organization, budget size, amount of team that can participate, and the like. But the other point that we want to really make in this cohort, and I don't know, does anybody happen to be a parent on the phone or take care of anyone as a caregiver? See Adam raising their hand. I'm assuming others are kind of putting up their hand. If you haven't been a caregiver in any form in your life, I hope that is for the right reasons, accordingly. But the reason I bring it up here is that at the end of the day, right, we are all designers. And it's important to realize that a big part of this cohort is expressing how everyone here has incredible superpowers to be a designer. And so I jokingly say that I design, right, my kids' lunch every day, right? I take in the feedback of what I think their activities and their experiences are going to be. I design and take inspiration from other caregivers, along the journey. I ultimately prototype and concept that lunch. And let me tell you, I get feedback about what worked and what did not along that journey. And I think that if we think about all the different experiences in our life, whether it's designing a romantic date or a platonic mentorship session, if it's about my commute to work, if it's about how I organize my closet or my pantry, design thinking and being a designer is an ever-present skill. And so at the foundation of this cohort is also kind of stepping into that owner's mindset of I have the right to design and shape experiences for myself. And it's important that others also feel that they are in an active role to design it as well. One of the cool things that we're going to have during this cohort is a lot of resources. So the Forbes Sons and GPNP with Kit and I have invested significant sums of resources and especially time and energy to actually play out more than 20 kind of what we call standard or kind of traditional templates that can be used in either PDF downloadable and printable format or online works. One of the critical themes you'll see drawn across the cohort's existence is this idea of what exercises are useful at what time and what combinations go together. So we might have to explore why, if I need to figure out if I'm really serving my customer base, I might need to sort of organize myself around a stakeholder map. If I need to understand if the moments that I think are the most delightful or are unfortunately triggering in pain are present in the audiences I serve and the staff that I enable, right? I might need a journey map or a customer journey. If I think that, I'm running out of ideas and I need to be generative here and figure out like what I can do next with critical resources like the space I have or the board that I've recruited or the like, I might use something called a creative matrix. And combinations of these methods as well play together. So if I'm thinking about launching a new program, I might first want to identify, let's say, a stakeholder map. Who am I really serving? And then I might want to think about a storyboard, which is what are the most critical moments that I am serving and supporting them in? And then once I've done both of those things, right, I might want to do something like a problem tree analysis, right, to understand what the root cause of why I chose what I chose plays into my bigger mission. And by no means am I expecting anyone to have even intuition about how to bring these together. But it's important to realize that you're starting with 1,000 hours of resources and videos and supporting context, because the goal of this, among many, is to empower you to not only take in this knowledge and apply it to your day to day, like Emily Whiteley pointed out with strategic planning or board transitions or big funder gain or big funder loss, but it's also about enabling program managers and finance people and operations and even interns and volunteers to participate in this process as well. Any reactions, Emily, that or questions that you or Kit wanted to kind of highlight here? Or should we keep on rolling?
Keep on rolling.
Okay, good.
All right. So the other thing we want to highlight here, and this is the timeliness of our expression, is if you haven't seen these weird pictures running around the internet, this is something called generative AI, which allows you to sort of take a series of word-based prompts among other inputs and generate things like images and videos and even paragraphs of additional writing, leveraging what we call an AI-assisted world. And this is also going to be your entry point or your appetizer kind of taster menu to the second and third cohort that's going to apply more and more support and kind of augmented and assisted AI techniques all the way till we get to the third cohort where it's really about hiring AI in the lead. And so what you're seeing here is a generative exercise that Adobe was able to create and the credentials you're seeing, because inherently, although I'm sure there's some geographic exceptions here, there's normally not a whole lot of penguins just hanging out in the middle of a desert, right? And why that's important is there's a lot of really cool ways to use this AI to actually accelerate this design process to become more representative of the populations you serve. The dirty little secret, not so secret, is that a lot of the human-centered design methods were based on sort of Western and Central European design standards, which means they carry a lot of that bias in how we design and shape and sense and make sense, of course, of these types of social impact issues. And so we have to find ways of using modern technology enablers like AI to mitigate that. So this generative AI concept we're going to use with tools like Beautiful AI to understand how generative AI can help you accelerate in your research methods the building of slides. And so the kind of meta point I'm making here is that I asked Beautiful.ai to actually make a slide about generative AI, and the slide you see on the right-hand side is how AI did that. And it's important because as part of your facilitator's guide, we're going to talk about how do you build agendas and how do you capture critical moments if you are like me and you're not the world's best person at building PowerPoint presentations or Google Slides. And then we're going to really expand and sort of weave in not just some of the nuances that are specific to social and nonprofit impact, but we're going to talk about how to take a classically designed method like a storyboard. And it's okay that you may not have had experience here. A storyboard in a nutshell is a series of frames around a movie or a problem that capture things like your biggest moment of delight or recognition that value has been created at the end of the movie. And ultimately, some of your first slides might indicate kind of where the big pain point is or the self-realization that somebody needs to engage with your organization or a product or product service system that your organization has made. And that looks like, something traditionally like this, where, you're going to talk about someone's journey, maybe ordering pizza to a restaurant. And of course, that would be a silly example for many of you on the phone, but I think we've all ordered something online or gone to a restaurant over our journey or can imagine what that is like. So we're going to take these kind of methods and, of course, make sure everyone is foundationally read in on why and how you use these from a strategic point of view. But then we're going to also borrow different types of generative AI dynamics. So image creators like Firefly and audio AI like Murph and conversational bots like Chat. And of course, foundational tools like Miro if you choose to kind of work through these in a digital capacity. What that allows us to do in a nutshell is create more realistic and representative characters that are in our storyboard. So this is a really simple example of, going from a storyboard that had a really generic kind of stick figure-esque image, which is still an improvement, I admit, from my hand-drawn ability to create and all this, and really thinking about like, hey, how and who should represent the audience I serve? Because all too often we take the humanity out of our design and thinking methods because we unfortunately lack that kind of painter or illustrator or graphic designer skill set to make the point more than illustratively on the fly. Now some of those things have changed. And so as you see here with human readable language, and we would spend a lot more time on how to design a good prompt for this, a customer getting on their mobile phone to order a pickup order of food from home when they are really, really hungry, they do not have the food yet, right? And you can see there's some really good things about these prompts and some challenging things of the prompt that we'd want to iterate together. What that allows us to do is to then insert, and you can see my kind of cut and paste version of just kind of getting us started on how this could work inside of our working sessions on taking what was historically a very non-representative character, image, or storyline and increasingly bringing illustration or sort of representation to the way we do design, which will greatly enhance our ability to capture feedback. Sort of an often missed point is from a lot of these traditional facilitators is that the methods themselves don't represent the populations or the communities that you are serving. Therefore, how could you possibly have the most effective responses or results if someone can't see themselves in the same way or can't instruct you on how to put themselves in the problem or the solution? So unless there's other questions, I'm going to keep on moving along our journey here, and I'm going to head over to Murph AI. And why I'm heading over to Murph AI, I'm going to go ahead and make sure my sound is, of course, shared on this way, is that there are other elements of doing design thinking that are not just visual. And so we're going to teach a little bit around what's called auditory feedback or haptic feedback, which is about vibrations and nodes and tactiles, because people in this world are differently abled, and we need to accommodate those in design thinking that may not have full use of their eyes or are only temporarily abled or differently abled in the moment. And so as part of this humanity-centered design effort, we're going to understand how to take voice and bring life to characters auditorily,
Wow, I am hungry. I really want pizza.
and then ultimately understand how to fundamentally come together
Hi, I am Oliver. I am one of the most popular child.
and think about, how to render auditory transitions really quickly from group to group. So if you know that you're working with a youth group on day 1 and an aging population on day 2, right? Oliver is going to be really
Wow,
helpful,
I am hungry. I really want pizza.
but not if we're talking about kind of a geriatric apprenticeship or a geriatric moment in time, right? So we start to see how in our design cohort, we're going to find opportunities for not just using AI to represent communities and populations that are otherwise not represented effectively in design thinking, but we're going to choose other modalities and mediums to organize ourselves as well. This is going to extend itself into some of the more popular methods. So we're going to use and show how chat can generate representative contextualized experiences. So this is a sort of a tongue-in-cheek and funny example of me trying to replicate what it would be like to actually get and call a pizza place for an actual pizza special. And I think, you can imagine how this is just the starting point to understanding about commuting or housing or education or two-gen issues or language differential or readjustments and a variety of other issues that would otherwise not be represented unless we could get much more specific than sort of what the narrator would say from an arm's length distance. It also allows us to partner with conversational bots and ask ourselves, is my starter prompt or is my example culturally representative? Is it honoring the kind of lived experience or what I believe the lived experience to the best of my ability can be as a starting point for the population I'm serving? And all of this can be brought together in kind of very structured kind of facilitator paths. And so we are in a place now where we're going to be actually simulating sort of how we'd walk through these examples in our cohort dynamics and actually asking you to go into your own organization and try these examples and share out in a series of kind of co-designed and expressive examples and exercises together, offering each other critique and kind of growing as the rising tide floats all boats. So that was actually everything I wanted to cover, Emily and Kit, in the kind of quick 30-minute office hours about strategic design in a box, what we'll be focusing on in our humanity-centered effort, and a little bit of a taster about how we'll be using kind of very modern methods and sort of best practices to bring everything together. But I'd love to kind of open it up now to the group and see if anybody would like to ask questions or wants to challenge anything that they've heard or bring us together in any new or exciting way.
Shared this example in the chat, but just kind of putting some actions behind this around the summit, given the volume of things that needed to be done and recognizing that one-to-one connections were much more important than tasks. I put an example in the chat about how ChatGPT wrote most of the session descriptions for all 83 agenda items for that event, which saved me hours of time and going back and forth with speakers. And so using that, design thinking first with Olivia and saying, okay, where are my biggest pain points with summit planning? Where can I bring in technology to aid this? And then utilizing ChatGPT is how you can do this at scale within a lot of different places of your organization. So I'm going to share in the chat two things. One, the info page to the strategic design in a box, second cohort and third cohort, like info catch-all page. And then two, I'm going to share the Zoom link in case you'd like to join the next session beginning right at 10:30. We really did back-to-back these to maximize time here. In case you'd like to talk more deeply about a specific internally facing AI that augments, development activities to help folks stay on the same page within your organization when crafting responses or questions for funders or creating a profile for your ideal donor and all those different pieces with some business behind that.
Wonderful.
Any questions?
Yeah,
Sorry.
questions, thoughts, reactions? Sorry about that. Yeah, Laura's got her hand up. That's great, Laura. Go ahead.
I am really new to all of this, and so it seems like, your background, you're from outer space. It feels like these topics to me are that far away from where my understanding is. So I know you put up a picture of the different different books or resources. Can you recommend something that would be like the, version for dummies to get from here to even knowing the language?
Well, Laura, it's certainly not for dummies. And trust me when I tell you, these kind of methods are 30, 40 years old, but they've been reinvented so many times in so many ways that
Oh,
the recency has been, ebbed and flowed, and it's all new with AI. So you're not out of date, right? You're just not as recently refreshed on it. What I would offer you is two things we're going to do. One is we have a course that's self-guided that allows all of this to be spoken in like slow motion with examples and exercises of vocabulary and the like. So we have a self-guided way, almost 35 hours worth of education to support if you're willing to commit in that way to do it. The second thing is that we're actually doing a series of kind of on-ramp meetings for those that are sort of like, we ask everybody to sort of self-grade on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being, you could teach the class, and 1 being like you can turn on your computer, right?
one.
And the goal is to get everybody to 5 before we start, right? As long as you're at
Right.
5, there's no worries, and we're committed to kind of bringing everybody up, but it'll be the work you have to do before the cohort, because we can't ask everybody to kind of range find once we kick off.
Thank you.
Of course. Adam, you have a question as well?
I'm Adam Hertzman from Jewish Federation of Greater Pittsburgh. My pronouns are he, him. This whole thing is exciting and a little overwhelming for me. But my question is whether I'm the right person on my team to be doing this. We have a design and creative manager on my team, and I wonder whether she would be the more appropriate person.
So here's the way to think about
the technology.
So Adam, there's something called an ISO standard. It's exactly what you infer. It's like an international standard, basically, of design thinking. And it says the following 3 things have to be present for design thinking. 1, you have to involve the people that you're trying to solve for. 2, it's got to be iterative. And the third one is got to be interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary. So the strongest outcomes will come from at least 2, ideally 3 people at an organization participating together, one of which should have an executive voice or a decision-making kind of point of view. One will typically have kind of an operationalizing point of view, and one will have a living it like feet on the street kind of point of view. That's a little bit of an oversimplification, but it's the right spirit to say you're not going to have the right kind of framing and kind of perspective unless you get someone who's got their kind of hand on the pulse. You're not going to have the right framing unless you have somebody that has to actually execute on what the visionary says. And you need the visionary in the room to understand if there's sustaining funding to support this becoming an embedded behavior. That's kind of the short answer. Does that get to the spirit of your question, Adam?
Yes. I think the only other thing, I'm looking at the time, so I apologize, but are these recorded somewhere? Because seeing this for certain, somebody in my development group should attend the second session, but since it's now, I don't think I'm going to be able to get somebody.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think Emily's going to send out recordings of all 3 of these shortly after.
Great.
This afternoon, she says. Wonderful. Okay. Well, we do have to get going. So everyone's welcome to join us on the next Zoom session or the one after that. It'll be complimentary, but you'll see the scaffolding as those that were in at the foundation. Don't be afraid to ask Emily and I or Kit any questions. Feel free to follow up via email as well. And hopefully we'll see some of you in the cohort. Thank you regardless for the time and the energy, and appreciate all of you. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.